Hi, friends. Hi, friends. My name's Mia Park, and I am having this interview series here on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel. The series is called In Response Interviews with Intriguing Internalizers. And an internalizer is someone who processes the outside world on the inside in really reflective and introspective ways. And I thought that interviewing these friends and families of mine who I think process the world in neat ways would be helpful, not only to just have a time, date, and stamp of what's going on in the world right now, the COVID-19 pandemic, but also just in general, because we all tick differently. And today I'm super excited to talk to Jennifer Kim in Queens, New York City. She's a Korean shaman, and we call that a mudang in Korean. And if you are familiar with shamanism, then you understand it's a rite of passage and it's a lot of work and it's a real art and calling. And if you're not familiar with shamanism, that's okay. Just know that there's sensitive people out there doing benevolent things for the powers of good and however they can. And you could just put it there. so, so Jennifer and I actually, this is actually the first time we're seeing each other in person.
Yes,
Jennifer, yeah, I know. I feel like so. Yeah, she and I get already so close because
yes.
we met over Instagram. So I am not a
Hmm.
practicing shaman, but as you my friends watching, you know I'm a pretty spiritual person, and I've been on a spiritual path for a long time. So I started learning about Korean shamanism when I lived in Korea in 1990, and there was that one book published in English in it, and I started going to the shaman sites that were listed in that book, like in 1990 and 91 in Korea. I came back to the States. I ended up doing an undergrad thesis on Korean shamanism, but just academically, because I don't think I've been called to practice that. So always had a strong connection with it. And then in my life enters Jennifer, who is a practicing Korean shaman. So is there anything now? Let's talk about you. Is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself with people?
I mean, I don't know what else. You know, born and raised in New York City. I was initiated as a Buddha a couple years back, and now this is all I do now.
That's awesome. Um, so we were saying before we went live, like Jennifer and I could sit here and talk about Korean shamanism like the entire time, but I also want to hear so much about what's going on in Jennifer's world. So first, I'd like to ask what's
Hmm.
going on in the outside world, like what is happening in Queens, New York City, in response right now to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, as you know, New York City is in the epidemic of COVID-19, and we were gonna have a opening, but I believe our governor just pushed back, and New York City expected to open at the end of summer. So we've been in lockdown for quite some time now, and it seems like for everyone's safety, we're still gonna be in lockdown throughout the summer as well. So it's been tough. It's been tough for everybody.
Hmm. And so he pushed it from June 13th now to the end of the summer.
Well, because Governor Cuomo, I think he has a huge checklist of benchmarks that the city has to meet, certain criteria and standards. I think they were hoping to move to open sometime, but with all the check marks and the criteria that we need, I think Mayor De Blasio said that we're going to probably open at the end of summer.
End of summer. Okay, well, we're all doing the thing wherever we are in the world. So that's like your outside world response. I'm wondering now inside your head and heart and soul, like what's going on in there in response.
Well, I think with everybody, I had a lot of emotions based on fear. There was a lot of fear because there was a lot of unknown, and um, and also it's really stressful times for us because everybody's under one household. So so in times like this, for me, I process more, like you said, I process things internally, and um, and it's got me thinking that we tend to brush our fears under the carpet or we put our skeletons in the closet. But what I realized during this process is that being afraid or being fearful, I'm putting myself in the closet along with my skeletons. So it kind of being fearful in a way kind of makes you face your fears in a sense because it's constantly there in the back of your mind or it's constantly there influencing you. So it's kind of made me face my fears in a way, and be a little bit and act out in ways I normally don't.
Interesting. So I'm wondering how your spirituality, as as being sensitive to spirituality, but also being a spiritual person who holds space for other people's spiritual experiences, what is that spiritual side of you doing to negotiate with the fear side?
Well, well, to because to accept, well, because there's a lot of fear for me, to accept my fear, I have to come to terms with it. So, there's a lot of processing because I'm always constantly thinking, and usually when you're thinking, you tend to go down a rabbit hole that always never ends. But for me to kind of give my thinking and my emotions a little bit structure, I just go into my meditations, my normal daily practices to keep me grounded. But besides that, I also allow myself to feel the emotions and whatever else, because my emotions are valid for that moment, So I accept, or I try to be present in that time, and process it however long it takes. But I try to do things like grounding work and prayer works and things like that to keep me level headed, because it's important right now for me to be level headed and a little bit more balanced, because I have to take on that additional stress with everybody at home, and everybody's stressed. So being balanced is hard work. Being balanced is to be very conscious of everything. So it's difficult, but we're making do.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask, I'm wondering in the Korean shamanistic paradigm, what does your daily practice look like?
Oh,
Yeah, and if it's
well, my
personal, you
daily
can pass.
no, it's not. It's just that sometimes it's so involved, even for me. Um, well, it normally I don't sleep. Normally I'm usually awake at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. Or if that's the case, what normally we're supposed to be clean before we enter the shrine. So I'll take a shower. I'll take a shower and get cleaned up. But once I enter my shrine, I'll do my water. I do offerings of water. I change out my water and offerings, and I go into prayer. I go into prayer. Sometimes I may start my day with the bows, 108 pekpalbe, 108 bows. I start my day off, or I go into prayers, or there's daily sutras, like the heart sutra, different types of sutras and kyongs that I could read to start my ritual, to start my day. It's at the it's just greeting the gods. It's about hello, good morning, how are you? It's about respect.
That's nice. Good sense of ritual. That's awesome. Um, so I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk
Hmm.
about this really awful thing that happened to you. And again, I'm so sorry it did, but you were apparently the first survivor of hate crime against Asians concerning the pandemic in Queens or New York.
Yeah, in Queens, this my incident happened back in January, actually, at the end of January, beginning of February. And from what I know, when I spoke to a couple of people, they told me I was actually one of the first case here in Queens, in New York. It was at my son's elementary school. I was dropping my son off in the morning, and I was at a red light, and sitting at a red light, and this woman behind me comes out of her car to knock on my window, and she's banging on my window, and I guess she had road rage and she was upset about something. But the first thing she said to me was, she's called me a fucking Chinese bitch, excuse my language. But the first thing she did was like, you Chinese. And then she called me diseased. And then later on, she was attacking me and telling me that I need to speak and learn English. So that incident escalated, unfortunately. That incident escalated to an assault where we got into a physical altercation, and I ended up going to the hospital because I ended up needing. I had a concussion, as well as I required stitches because she started hitting me with objects. So it was a big event.
I am so sorry for that. That is awful. Um,
Hmm.
Especially then, there's not even a better or worse time for it. It's just awful that it happened all together. And I'm so sorry about that. You're
Mhm.
okay from being attacked, right? I know that was months ago.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm all healed, everything, I'm okay. I'm still dealing with the circumstances, but the legalities of that case. But for everything else in terms of healing, I'm okay.
So it's interesting being a sensitive person when these really difficult challenges come at us in the outside world. Like, I feel like there's more of a demand. In my lineage, we talk a lot about pressure, that we need these outside pressures in order to shift and evolve. So, how did that very severe incidence of being attacked because you're Asian and the disease thing, with that kind of pressure, how did that help you evolve internally?
Well, the way I processed it, I didn't take it really personal. Even though it was a personal attack, I didn't take it so personal. And instead, when I went through this situation, I actually opened my eyes through firsthand experience of what other minorities might go through when they have to deal with local law enforcement, the local politicians, and the local, the justice system in general. For me, you know, for me having that attack, it just gave me bigger, how do I say, bigger understanding, bigger of what happens to certain people who may feel that they don't have a voice. So it's for me, I don't know. For me, that's how I processed it. For me, I was trying to look at the bigger picture in terms of more social justice, because there are a lot of people who are experiencing a lot of different types of assault and crimes and things like that. And going and this experience for me helped me understand or be more compassionate to those who are, or sympathize to other people who are going through the same thing as I am.
Yeah, for sure. Again, lovely. I love how you're processing these, like the outside world stuff, and then this immediate, like you being attacked into these kind of personal, hopeful ways. That's nice. That's nice. So, speaking of hopeful, are you hopeful for things right now, considering the way the world is?
Despite the outside world is in
Yeah.
chaos, I'm actually quite hopeful. I really am, because especially in my community, and my husband, he does a lot of community work within our local area. um, I've seen so many people rising up from this situation. So many charities are born where we're taking care of our first responders, and we're also taking care of our elderly communities who are usually often abandoned or alone. Um, because of a lot of the hate issues against Asian with COVID-19, a lot of the local community people here in Queens decided to gather together and create their own was a special angels type of where they do block watches and they just drive around trying to help out their fellow neighbors. So when I see, despite the outside world may be chaotic, I believe there's a lot of hope, because there's so many beautiful things that are being born, and so many people are reaching out in so many ways. So I believe there's hope.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. So I also want to ask, since you are a Korean shaman, uh, so I guess it's hard to ask if to explain to people. So Korean shamanism or shamanism, well, I'll let you explain it, how the process of is connecting with the different deities, and then I can ask my question. Would you mind, like layman's?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Well, Korean shamanism. So in the middle of shamanism is the mudang, the shaman, and essentially shaman, in a very simple sense, is the intermediary between the gods and the human world. So basically, we're the connecting piece. But for me, being born in New York and being Korean American and being Korean diaspora, I wasn't exposed to that shamanistic community, or I wasn't exposed to that type of environment, because my family was Christian and Catholic. But so it took me a longer time to realize what was happening to me. It took me a lot longer time to accept this, because this was completely different for me. But anyways, shamanism, to be a mudang, we say that you have to be chosen by the spirits, and to be chosen or marked by the spirits means that you go through a series of shamanic or divine illness that we call shimpyong. And Shinpyeong means Shin is the gods, Pyong means sickness or disease. So it means, this spirit sickness or disease or sickness from the gods. And that's one of the indicators, because when someone's going through Shinpyeong, they lose it. There's a lot of things affecting people. You tend to get sick. There's chronic pain involved. There's mental states that are, mentally you're being broken down. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of life difficulties that you go through, and usually Shinpyeong takes a long time. Meaning that Shinpyeong is something that's lifelong most of the time, because being someone who's a person of the spirits, you're always constantly affected by the spirits. So in a sense, when people talk about Shinpyeong, they talk about their life in a sense that we realize our life was affected by the spirits. So in a way, it's a spirit disease. It's, a lot of it is affecting us. But
Mm.
but in terms of being a muda, we there's a lot of rituals. There's a lot of rules. It's a traditional path. So there's a lot of things that goes along with being traditional, respectful for elders, entering a lineage, finding a teacher. Everything is being mindful and conscious, about everything that we do. And sometimes that could be very exhausting, to be mindful and conscious about everything that we have to do. But it is part of the path, and this path isn't really it's not easy. This path is quite difficult.
It's
It's really
demanding,
difficult.
right? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
knowing that, and I think again with that pressure, with that demand of maintaining your relationship with the spirits, because again, you're chosen, right? So I'm wondering if what your spiritual and or philosophical responses to what's happening, like we have a global pandemic. Do you think that there's something deeper going on there, spiritually or philosophically?
Well, I tend to think of everything as balance. I tend to believe everything is very on a scale, between the duality, right? Good and evil, love and hate. So I feel that when things are turned, especially with nature, because nature is all about a cycle. So so I believe that when things are out of balance, a lot of abrupt things might happen to put things back into balance. For example, I don't mean that, our world, lately is out of balance because of all the things just before COVID-19, Australia and a lot of the forests were on fire. There was a lot of destruction happening to our land, our earth. And I think that maybe the earth is trying to recalibrate or just balance it out a little bit. Problem with change is that change is always explosive in a way, because I say that, for a mountain to grow, you need an earthquake. So a change is something outside of us that always shakes us. So um, I think that the earth is kind of recalibrating. There's a little bit of balance. It's trying to rebalance it out a little bit, unfortunately. But also in terms of spirits and diseases, we tend to see viruses or diseases with a spirit of their own in a way, so
Wait,
it's really.
can
Mhm.
you can you say more about that? How with diseases there's a spirit? Like, are you talking? Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, at least in terms of Korea, like where Korea had pandemics, like for example, pandemics of the flu, smallpox, measles, and things like that. Korea's traditional response has always been shamanic to pandemics, because it was seen as a spirit was upset, and it manifested in a form of disease. For example, I think in late 1800s during the Joseon Dynasty, cholera. I don't know if I'm not pronouncing it, cholera. There was a pandemic with cholera, and what they did was they thought that cholera was it came from a rat. It was a disease from a rat, and they said that the spirit of the rat was very upset. So that's why it came out as a disease of cholera. And what people did was people put pictures of cats on their doors, because they use their logic. Cats chase away mice, so they kind of, that's how people battled it back then. or they use firecrackers and to scare the spirits away, or the color red, was used as cleansings and exorcism. So traditionally, that's how they battled pandemics. Nowadays, we don't. Yes, there's a spiritual aspect of it, but then even as a mudang myself, I still go towards the traditional medicine and and modern medicine and combining it together in my practice.
Yeah, thanks. Um, just at Korea being an ancient society, it's just the logic and the way that people connect surviving through different tools, the spiritual tools. It's logical. Cats chase rats. Let's put
Mm-hmm.
pictures. That there is a sense to that somehow, and that like, I don't want to say primitive because it's sophisticated for their time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
well, speaking of time, we are at about time. Is there
Oh,
anything else that you want to share? You and I could talk about this forever.
I know, I know. I don't know what else there is to share. There is a lot to talk about,
Yeah.
but you have any questions, anything I could help maybe guide, but I don't know.
Do you have if there's advice that you can from a Korean shamanistic perspective, is there any advice you can give us to help?
Well, during this time, during the pandemic, I think it forces everybody to slow down a little bit, and I think what people don't realize in terms of slowing down is that breathing is very crucial. So I think sometimes for people, when you're feeling very overwhelmed, some people can't do meditation or things like that. It's just being mindful of your breath work. Like count, if you're upset, you count to 10, right? We have that thing. But I think being aware of our breaths could kind of slow things down a little bit, bring more awareness to, it's not going to help for everyone, but it's going to help slow things down a little bit. It helps you make a little bit my, hopefully, I think breath work is essential.
Mm.
So I think breath work is needed.
That's really good, very good practical advice from a very sensitive Korean shaman giving very earthly practical advice. You know, Anyway, so
Thank you.
thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you so much, Jennifer Kim, for joining.
Thank you.
So
Thank
Jennifer
you.
Kim in New York, her links, if you're watching on Facebook, her links are up there. On YouTube, her links are down there. If you want to get in touch with her, she does divinations and works with people remotely. We're all working internetally
Hmm.
right now, so
Hmm.
you can get in touch with Jennifer then. Follow her Instagram account. It's shaman.mudang. It's really good, right? Did I get it right? Shaman.mudang?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Like my Facebook
Thank
page,
you.
subscribe to me on YouTube, and take care. See you soon, everyone.